Everything changed in a matter of seconds. Welcome to NFL Nexus. If you love deep dives into the absolute biggest stories in football, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. And hey, if you really want to support the channel and what we do here, consider becoming a channel member. Now let's get into it. Today, we're looking at a franchise teetering right on the razor's edge. We are looking at a team balancing precariously between championship glory and absolute disaster. Literally everything is on the line. Let's dive deep into the source material and dissect the anatomy of the 2026 Indianapolis Colts and what might just be the ultimate gamble in modern NFL history.
You know that sinking feeling when the air just completely leaves a packed stadium? When 70,000 screaming, electric fans suddenly go dead silent? That was the harsh, cold reality for the Indianapolis Colts in 2025. They were on pace to boast one of the most lethal, high-octane passing offenses in the entire National Football League. The vibe was incredible, and then the snap, the hit. The grim reality setting in on the turf as the medical staff rushed out. Daniel Jones suffered a devastating season-ending injury. And in that one singular, agonizing moment, a legitimate Super Bowl window completely slammed shut. The air was sucked entirely out of the locker room, and the entire trajectory of the franchise was altered in an instant.
Part 1. The Calm Before the Storm.
To truly understand the madness of 2026, you have to understand 2025. The sheer velocity of their collapse was staggering. Through weeks 1 to 10, they were completely dominant. They roared to an 8-2 start. The rest of the league was genuinely terrified of this roster. Then came week 11, the injury to Jones. What followed was a brutal, agonizing, soul-crushing 7-game losing streak. 7 consecutive weeks of walking off the field in defeat. They didn't just stumble out of the playoffs, they plummeted. Injuries completely crushed their playoff dreams, and that devastating slide, that profound feeling of absolute helplessness, was the exact breeding ground for the desperate, radical front office moves we saw next.
Part 2. The multi-million-dollar gamble. The 2026 offseason.
A collapse of that magnitude forces a front office's hand. You absolutely have to make a statement, and the one the Colts made sent literal shockwaves through the league. $28.5 million. I want to just let that staggering number hang in the air for a second. That is the massive yearly contract awarded to wide receiver Alec Pierce. The Colts opted to retain Pierce on a deal that makes him the team's highest-paid non-quarterback. Listen, this isn't just a contract. It's an astronomical financial risk. It's a declaration. The front office pushed all their chips right to the center of the table on a player who has never even seen 85 targets in a single season. The pressure that comes with a $28.5 million price tag is immense. It fundamentally changes how you're viewed in the locker room, how you're game planned against by defensive coordinators, and how every single dropped pass is heavily scrutinized by the media.
But here's the thing. The money is only half the story. To pay Pierce, someone had to go. The Colts shocked the entire football world by shipping Michael Pittman away to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and all they got in return was a late day 3 pick swap. They traded a proven, reliable target for absolute pennies on the dollar, just to clear the runway for Alec Pierce to be promoted to the undisputed WR1. This leaves an enormous, terrifying void in the passing game, a massive hole where reliability used to live. Pittman was the ultimate safety blanket. Now, the Colts are flying completely without a net.
So you have to be asking the crucial question, why? Why take a risk that could literally get a general manager fired on the spot? 11.9 yards per target. That is why. Pierce was the only player to eclipse 1,000 receiving yards for the Colts in 2025. In back-to-back years, this 26-year-old phenomenon has led the entire league in yards per reception. He consistently makes massive, game-breaking gains downfield to make up for a lack of volume. The Colts are betting the entire house that if they finally feed him over 100 targets, if they give him true WR1 volume, that 11.9 yards per target will translate into the most explosive, dangerous, deep threat in the modern era. It's a calculated gamble for sure, but it's a massive gamble nonetheless.
Part 3. Filling the offensive void. One man cannot beat double coverage every single Sunday. It's just not possible, especially when reports confirm the Colts are not planning to pursue a true number 3 wide receiver. So how exactly do you replace Pittman's production without bringing in outside veteran help? You look to a player like 2025 first-rounder Tyler Warren. 817 receiving yards for a tight end is fantastic, ranking second on the team. But the terrifying part for opposing defenses is that almost 60% of those yards came after the catch. 60%. That is visual proof of explosive, raw power. This is a 23-year-old Pro Bowl rookie tight end who flat out refuses to go down after contact. He is dragging linebackers. He is breaking the will of strong safeties. The Colts are banking heavily on getting him even more involved in the downfield passing game, transforming him into one of the most physically imposing tight ends the league has ever seen.
But there is a much darker side to this receiving core. Josh Downs is a character desperately in need of a redemption arc. In his first 2 seasons, the guy was electric, racking up 1,574 yards. But in 2025, a devastating statistical regression all the way down to just 566 yards. He saw the fewest targets of his career, and his efficiency metrics didn't just dip, they took a complete nosedive right off a cliff. He primarily lines up in the slot, and the Colts are absolutely counting on him to bounce back. Because if Downs cannot salvage his efficiency, this offense will essentially choke on its own lack of depth.
And the margin for error behind Downs and Pierce? It's razor thin. You have Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, a free agent signing. Ashton Dulin, a longtime core special teams contributor now thrust into serious offensive duty. And Deion Burks, a 7th-round draft pick with an athletic profile similar to Downs, suddenly thrust into the punishing, unforgiving spotlight of the NFL slot. These are the boundary players and rookies expected to fill the void. One twisted ankle, one pulled hamstring, and the Colts' depth chart turns to absolute dust.
Part 4. Running the 2026 Gauntlet. Now that we've set the stage with the roster, we really have to look at the battlefield. This is a grueling, physical gauntlet. The anxiety of this opening stretch is impossible to ignore. Week 1, dealing with Lamar Jackson. The Ravens are an absolute nightmare matchup, and the Colts do not possess an elite front for chasing down highly mobile quarterbacks. If they can't run the ball and eat the clock, they lose, plain and simple. Then comes Week 2. On the road, Arrowhead Stadium, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. It is arguably the toughest non-division test of the season against a quarterback who is notoriously lethal in one-score games. The physical and mental exhaustion of facing Jackson and Mahomes back-to-back to open the season, it's enough to test the absolute limits of any locker room. And the brutal, grim reality of those opening tests? An 0-2 start. Just imagine the pressure cooker in Indianapolis. You just paid your receiver $28.5 million. You traded your ultimate safety blanket, your quarterback is coming off a catastrophic injury, and you open the season getting utterly crushed by the league's elite. 0-2 is a dark, suffocating hole to climb out of. The whispers in the media start. The panic sets in. It's a true test of character.
But then, a lifeline in Week 5. They travel to Pittsburgh. And what's incredibly fascinating here is the opponent. Aaron Rodgers in a Steelers uniform. But the intel says he's already checked out. He's trying to protect himself, actively searching for an exit strategy, because he knows the Steelers are quietly committed to a younger player behind him. It's a desperate matchup, 2 teams gasping for air. But against a checked-out legend, the Colts should find a way to claw out a gritty victory and finally stop the bleeding.
Part 5. Crucial Turning Points.
Surviving the opening stretch is one thing, but the middle of the NFL season is where the true identity of a team is forged in fire. And that brings us to the ultimate question, exposing this defense's fatal flaw. Can they survive the scramble? The data strongly says no. In Week 4, they face rookie Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, a tough home loss. Then, in Week 7, they travel to face a Minnesota Vikings team that now features the electrifying Kyler Murray under center. The mobility of Murray provides an unsolvable puzzle for this front seven. Home field advantage tilts the scales, resulting in another devastating loss. The Colts simply cannot contain the scramble, and it bleeds them dry.
Then comes Week 9, an absolute cinematic showdown, blood feud. It is brother versus brother. Colts wide receiver Josh Downs going head-to-head against Cowboys rookie safety Caleb Downs. It is without a doubt one of the most dramatic interdivisional battles of the entire year. Family pride is totally on the line right in the middle of a playoff chase. But unfortunately, the drama won't save them. The Cowboys are, across the board, a vastly superior team. The superior roster wins out, handing the Colts yet another agonizing, highly emotional defeat.
The bruises really accumulate in the mid-season grind. Week 11 against Houston brings a bitter rivalry game. C.J. Stroud delivers a sharp knife to the heart, hitting Nico Collins for a game-winning score in the final chaotic minute. Week 12 brings the New York Giants. Now, the Giants are improved with veteran coach John Harbaugh running the show, but a pair of critical, game-changing turnovers by Giants quarterback Jackson Dart will allow the Colts to barely survive the second half. But the relief, it's short-lived. Week 14 brings a brutal trip outside the Dome to face a absolutely loaded Philadelphia Eagles roster. A loss in Philly leaves the Colts battered, bruised, and feeling incredibly desperate.
But wait, how do you actually survive this kind of grind? How does a defense that struggles with running quarterbacks manage to stay afloat? You look at the massive, colossal upgrades in the secondary, Sauce Gardner and Charvarius Ward. This is the new elite. Having lockdown players of this magnitude absolutely matters. It matters deeply when you face someone like Joe Burrow in a pivotal Week 16 matchup. Gardner and Ward have the rare ability to just erase receivers, and their lockdown coverage is the exact reason the Colts are predicted to shut down the Bengals in the fourth quarter. It is a massive, defining defensive stand.
Part 6. The final verdict. The playoff push.
When it matters most, it all comes down to a ruthless, undeniable, 4-game winning streak to close out the season. The team is fighting with literally everything they have in their bodies for a playoff berth. Week 15, they crush the Titans, blowing them out behind huge, explosive games from Jones and Pierce. Week 16, that defensive masterpiece against Burrow and the Bengals we just talked about. Week 17, hitting the road to beat a Cleveland Browns team totally plagued by quarterback issues. And Week 18, sweeping the Jaguars, leaning heavily on a dominant, punishing run game from Jonathan Taylor, who absolutely breaks the will of the Jacksonville defense. 4 straight wins when their backs were entirely against the wall.
And when the dust finally settles, when the clock hit 0 on Week 18, the final, hard-fought record stands at 10-7. Take a moment to really absorb that. After the crushing 0-2 start, after the devastating injury of 2025 that derailed everything, after betting $28.5 million on potential alone, they battled their way to 10 wins and 7 losses.
But here is the multi-million-dollar question. Is it enough? Is 10-7 enough to survive the brutal AFC wildcard chase? The Houston Texans figure to be just a notch better, likely taking the AFC South crown. That leaves the Colts stranded in the absolute bloodbath of the wildcard hunt, a haunting, unresolved cliffhanger for a franchise that pushed every single one of their chips to the middle of the table. We're just going to have to wait and see how the cards fall. Thanks so much for exploring the tape with us on this explainer. Don't forget to subscribe to NFL Nexus, hit that like button, and I'll catch you in the next one.